Senator McKim. Senator Hanson.
Thank you, Acting Deputy President. Well, I've listened to some comments in this chamber today, and all I hear is about racism. Let me make my point very clear. When I first came into Parliament, I stood on the grounds of equality for all Australians. Equality, regardless of race, colour, creed. And also, what I've tried to make quite clear is that yes, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Island people were the first peoples of this land here. Yes, it was colonised, Australia was colonised, and people came here. And since then, many migrants from around the world have sought Australia to make it their home. And they've come here to join us and to be one of us, and I welcome that. My first husband was actually Polish. He was a migrant after the Second World War who came to Australia for a new life with his mother. I've had involvement with people of all different cultural backgrounds. The manager of my shop, my fish and chip shop, was also a refugee from Laos, and I had the highest regard for her, and we worked very well together. I had properties that I actually rented out to an Aboriginal lady and her child. My children grew up in the same street with Aboriginal children. My association with all different cultures has been one that I have cherished. My parents were people that welcomed anyone into their homes, and that's how I was taught. And I have respect for so many different cultures and the people. Respect is earned by the person, not purely based on who they are or their race. It must be earned. Under this Act, and people say, well, why are we standing up here and speaking out against the words of to insult, offend, humiliate or intimidate? Today's day and times has changed greatly, and people have come to our country, and I remember most years ago when they came, there was the Greeks and the Italians and different ones. They were called wogs. They were actually, they kept telling me, they said, my God, we were actually had everything thrown at us. We were abused, but we said, no, we got on with it. Because when the Aussies had a go at them in that Aussie way, they then became part of the community. They assimilated. I remember all the guys at the fish markets, the Greeks and the Italians. We all had jokes together, and it was taken in the good sense of humour. I think we've lost that in Australia. I think people have become so precious that you can't say or do anything anymore, otherwise you'll be dragged off to the law courts. And you talk about racism. Let's define the word racism. A racist is a person who believes their race to be superior to another. Understand the meaning. So when you criticise or you have a point of a difference, don't counteract that by saying it's a racist comment. And I'm fed up with people in this parliament and even outside this House calling me a racist, yet they cannot define one word that I have ever said in policy or anything that is racist. Now, I remember years ago, when I was first elected, I went to have a meeting with the Aboriginal elders. They were set up with the media. But I remember they came out. They called me a pig in mud and white trash. The media actually printed it. And then when I actually spoke to them about it, they said, well, what's wrong with that? I can well imagine if I'd reversed the words, but I never did. And it's what I'm hearing now, it's all one way, one-sided. Let's have debate on this. And Senator Clem says here, well, if we change it and get rid of 18C, well then what do you want to say that you can't say now? And I will say, through you, the Chair, Madam Deputy President, Case in point is those students. What did they say in the Facebook page? This is segregation by segregation. So they were shut down. What is that? That is not an insult. It was pure fact. They actually went to the university, they wanted to go into a room and use computers that was purely marked for Aboriginal only. That is racist in itself. Why didn't they go and complain about it to the 18C? Why wasn't something done about it? But it isn't. They're protected because we have laws in this country now that protect anyone who is not of a colour or anyone from another race can criticise the Australians. It's become now in Australia down to reverse racism. That's why Australians are fed up with it. That's why they're saying they want change, because it's got to a point of view where you cannot have a say anymore. I'm okay, I'm in this chamber, I'm protected. I can say what I want to say here. But if I go outside this chamber and say it outside like many Australians, we can't have an opinion. We can't say anything anymore. Now, Senator Dodson made a comment. He said up until 1967 he was included in the census, and that was true. But the Aboriginal people did have the vote prior to that, and I believe it was Western Australia. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But the whole fact is that Australians believed then at the time to bring the Aboriginal people in, to treat them equally. That's why the majority of Australians, around about 97–98%, voted that, because they wanted equality. They didn't want this separation anymore. And he speaks that they weren't included in the Constitution. Actually, Section 51(26) of the Australian Constitution, at that time before the referendum, said that the Commonwealth shall make specific laws for any race other than the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders. What the framers of that Constitution, our leaders who actually drew up the Constitution in the 1890s, why they put that in to make specific laws for any race other than was because of the Chinese and the Afghans in this country, mainly the Chinese, because of the opium and the immigration. That's why it was put in. It was not put in to do anything to do with the Aboriginal people at all. It was to do with that. And Senator Dodson talks about words. Words can be hateful. Words is what is happening in Syria and the fighting around the world. I don't believe it's just about words. I think it's about hatred of a religion that is casting their hate and their political ideology onto the rest of the world. That's what's behind this. And I do believe that we have the same problem in Australia if we don't address it and have the right to debate it, to find the answers, so that each and every one of us can live in peace and harmony on our streets and not live in fear of being dragged before the courts. I'm pleased to hear that Senator Kim is actually following my Facebook page. He made a mention of it. Maybe we'll learn a lot more from how the Australian people really feel. So what I'm saying here today, is it really going too far to have an opinion that we offend or insult, humiliate or intimidate someone? Maybe the people in Australia should start looking at then others of a different religious background to us, that they may start to think twice before they make their comments on the streets towards our young ladies who wish to not cover themselves up or dress in a fashion of a short skirt and then be told they are nothing but the meat market. Or women on our beaches who can't go swimming because others are offensive towards them. There is a lot of this going on in this country, yet there are people in this chamber who will not acknowledge it, and I'm sick and tired of seeing them stand up for one race or other people in this country that don't see themselves as Australians, who have no intentions of ever assimilating, and we are told constantly, time and time again, that we must be tolerant. Well, I've had it up to here with my tolerance, that I believe that we have a right to have an opinion, have a say, debate it. And I'll go back to the point. I welcome anyone who has come to this country to join us, to assimilate and respect our culture, our way of life. And I stand by that. It is a shame that we've come to this point that we need to debate this issue, but that's how our country is headed.